In the shadow of the serene Appalachian foothills, a sinister presence lurked within the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Here, Pazuzu Algarad, a self-proclaimed Satanist, cast a dark shadow over his neighborhood, transforming his mother's home into a den of evil where unspeakable acts were committed. This was not just a house, but a chilling epicenter of ritualistic practices that terrorized a community for over a decade. Neighbors lived in dread, with windows tightly shut, trying in vain to keep the stench of decay at bay. The fearsome reputation of Algarad and his grotesque lifestyle spread, festering like the rumors of the horrors that unfolded behind those closed doors. His impact was profound, leaving a scar on the community that struggled with both the reality and the myth of the man known as Pazuzu Algarad. For those brave enough to delve into this true crime story, this video promises to unfold the layers of this chilling case. We invite you to follow along as we explore the depths of human depravity in the terrifying tale of Pazuzu Algarad. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into the darkest corners of criminal minds. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Let's unravel this mystery together. Pazuzu Algarad, born John Alexander Lawson on August 12, 1978 in San Francisco, California, was an enigma wrapped in the guise of an average child. His birth brought little hint of the darkness that would come to define his life. The Lawson family moved to Clemmons, North Carolina when John was only 2, seeking a fresh start in the more tranquil environment of the East Coast. From the outset, John's life was marred by instability and change. His early childhood, described by those who knew him as relatively normal, began to show cracks when his parents divorced in 1988. His father moved back to California, leaving young John in the care of his increasingly erratic mother, Cynthia. The absence of his father left a void that was never properly filled, and the relationship with his mother began to deteriorate as she struggled with her own demons. Cynthia remarried, bringing a new man into their home who John deeply resented. This stepfather tried to impose order, but the rebellious young boy was having none of it. By the time John was 8, his behavior had started to turn concerning. He became withdrawn, spending long hours alone, and his temper grew short and explosive. As John entered his teenage years, the distress signals grew only stronger. His interest in the macabre began to surface, an escape perhaps from his turbulent home life. He developed a fascination with the occult, drawing him towards elements of the dark and the demonic, an interest that seemed to provide him with a sense of power and control he lacked in his real life. His transformation accelerated with his mother's decline into alcoholism and mental illness. The house on Nob Hill Drive became a place of neglect and decay, a physical manifestation of the dysfunction within. John's appearance began to change. He adopted the goth style, wearing black, growing his hair long, and immersing himself in heavy metal music. It wasn't just a teenage phase, it was a descent into a persona that he would later mold into Pazuzu Algarad. High school brought no respite for John. He was an outcast, teased and bullied for his strange behavior and unkempt appearance. His academic performance plummeted as his psychological state frayed. The educational system, unequipped to deal with such extreme cases of adolescent distress, largely let him slip through the cracks. By the age of 16, John was dabbling in drugs and alcohol, substances that numbed his senses and perhaps the pain of his existence. It was around this time that his behavior turned from self-destructive to outright menacing. He began to claim that he had special powers, that he could communicate with demons and manipulate the physical world through his will alone. These claims were met with a mixture of fear and ridicule by his peers. John's embrace of a new identity was complete when he legally changed his name to Pazuzu Algarad, a homage to the demon of chaos in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. This new persona was everything John Lawson was not: fearless, powerful, and utterly in control. Pazuzu's house became a reflection of his psyche, a temple to his twisted beliefs, decorated with satanic symbols and littered with animal carcasses, a place where he could reign unchallenged, drawing in others who were similarly lost or disenfranchised. This period marked the final shedding of John Lawson and the rise of Pazuzu Algarad. The troubled boy from Clemmons had transformed into a figure of terror, his life a trajectory marked by increasing darkness and a descent into chaos that would eventually lead to his notorious criminal acts. As Pazuzu Algarad embraced his new identity, his life spiraled further into the abyss, marked by an increasing fascination with Satanism, escalating violence, and a disturbing ability to manipulate those around him. This section delves into his descent into darkness, exploring the chilling transformation that captivated and terrified a community. Pazuzu's exploration of Satanism wasn't merely an adolescent phase, it was a deliberate and sustained dive into the depths of a philosophy that celebrated chaos and anarchy. He immersed himself in the study of ancient and modern satanic texts, blending distorted interpretations with his own burgeoning delusions. His home in Clemmons, North Carolina, transformed into a tangible manifestation of his beliefs, a macabre sanctuary where rules of normal society did not apply. The house on Nob Hill Drive became infamous for its grotesque conditions. Visitors described entering a world apart, stepping through a door that led directly into Pazuzu's chaotic mind. The interior was dark, with black painted walls covered in satanic symbols and graffiti. Animal carcasses, often used in his rituals, were strewn about, decomposing openly in living areas, while the smell of rot permeated the air. The living conditions were squalid, trash piled high, and basic hygiene was non existent. It was under these appalling conditions that Pazuzu not only lived but thrived, drawing in a circle of outcasts and misfits who were either too vulnerable or too fascinated to distance themselves from his malevolent influence. Pazuzu's charisma was dark and compelling. He told stories of demonic possession and supernatural powers, claiming he could control the weather and communicate with spirits. These tales, whether believed or not, were effective in building his persona, casting him as a figure of immense power and mystery. This influence extended deeply into the lives of those around him. He encouraged and facilitated drug use, self-harm, and rituals that purported to bind them to him spiritually and emotionally. Violence became a central element of life at Nob Hill Drive. Pazuzu was known to host gatherings that often spiraled into chaos. What started as drug-fueled parties would devolve into sessions of extreme body modification, animal sacrifice, and discussions of human sacrifice. He flaunted his disregard for societal norms, reveling in the discomfort or horror that his actions provoked in others. His behavior became increasingly erratic and dangerous, not just to himself, but to everyone around him. Pazuzu's influence was like a poison, seeping into the lives of his followers. He attracted those who felt disenfranchised by society, people who were struggling with their own demons, and saw in him a figure who had transcended societal judgment. They were drawn into his orbit, becoming participants in his nightmarish rituals. Pazuzu used these rituals to cement his control, manipulating participants into loyalty by convincing them that they were part of something greater than themselves, something sacred and terrifying. For the local community, Pazuzu Algarad was a figure of morbid curiosity and palpable fear. His outward appearance tattooed and often blood-covered, with filed teeth and piercing eyes made real the nightmares of those who lived near him. Parents warned their children to steer clear of Nob Hill Drive, and local police were both bewildered by and worried about the extent of his influence and activities. Despite numerous complaints and the palpable tension he brought to the community, intervention was slow. The legal system struggled to penetrate the thick veil of rumor and half-truths that surrounded him until it was far too late. This period in Pazuzu's life marked a complete forfeiture of his humanity in exchange for a notorious legacy. His home, once merely a house in disrepair, had become a den of evil, a physical and symbolic center of his descent into darkness, a chilling beacon of the power of delusion and depravity. The unraveling of Pazuzu Algarad's sinister world began with unsettling disappearances that shook the community of Clemmons, North Carolina. The horrific reality that had been festering within the walls of his decrepit home would soon burst forth into the public eye, leading to a complex and chilling investigation. The first cracks appeared with the disappearance of two men, both of whom were last seen at Pazuzu's notorious house. The local community, already tense with whispered rumors about the bizarre and frightening behavior of Pazuzu, felt a growing unease. The stench of death seemed to permeate from the residence, a foul odor that neighbors had complained about for years, but which was dismissed as part and parcel of the filthy conditions Pazuzu lived in. As the men vanished without a trace, families and friends rallied, their worry turning into action as they pressured law enforcement to look deeper into the man they saw as a clear and present danger. The police, however, faced a tangled web of fear, manipulation, and loyalty that Pazuzu had spun around himself. Those who frequented his home, a mix of outcasts and addicts drawn by the allure of a place where society's rules did not apply, were initially uncooperative. Many were under his sway, afraid or unwilling to betray the man who had brought them into his fold. The local law enforcement had to navigate not just the physical filth of Pazuzu's home, but the psychological barriers that protected him. As the pressure mounted, small cracks began to show in the facade Pazuzu had built. One by one, reluctant witnesses began to come forward, their consciences spurred by the increasing concern and the relentless persistence of the victims' families. They told stories of wild, drug fueled rituals, of violence that seemed to escalate with each gathering, and of Pazuzu's boasts about acts of killing and burial rituals in the backyard. Armed with these testimonies, the police finally obtained a search warrant. What they discovered was a scene that could only be described as a house of horrors. The search revealed not just the expected filth and evidence of satanic rituals, but also human remains buried beneath the earth in the backyard. Forensic teams worked meticulously to unearth the bodies, confirming the community's worst fears. Pazuzu had not been merely a local boogeyman, he was a murderer. The investigation revealed that Pazuzu's crimes were not impulsive acts of violence, but calculated acts of control and dominance. He used his knowledge of Satanism and the occult to justify his actions and to keep his followers in line, claiming supernatural justification for his deeds. This manipulation extended even into how he disposed of the bodies, incorporating elements of ritual to imbue these acts with a twisted sense of purpose. The arrest of Pazuzu Algarad sent shockwaves through the community. For many, there was a profound sense of relief mixed with horror at the scale of his depravity. The media descended on the small town, and the case quickly gained notoriety, drawing attention from across the nation. As details emerged of the conditions within the house and the nature of the rituals performed there, the public was both fascinated and repelled by the depth of darkness that had existed so quietly among them. In the aftermath, the community grappled with a complex legacy of fear, sorrow, and disbelief. How had Pazuzu been allowed to continue his reign of terror for so long? The investigation itself became a subject of scrutiny. Questions were raised about the effectiveness of the initial police responses and the broader societal conditions that allowed such a predator to thrive seemingly in plain sight. The crimes of Pazuzu Algarad remain a dark chapter in the history of Clemmons, serving as a harrowing reminder of the capacity for evil that can lurk behind the facade of normality and the importance of vigilance in a community's protective measures against such malevolent forces. The trials of Pazuzu Algarad and his accomplices marked a pivotal moment for the legal system and the community of Clemmons. In the courtroom, the gory details of his crimes were were laid bare, painting a vivid picture of the chaos he had wrought. Algarad faced charges that could lead to the death penalty, reflecting the severity of his actions. However, before his fate could be decided by the legal system, Algarad took his own life in prison in October 2015, adding a grim final chapter to his notorious legacy. The trials of his accomplices were equally intense, with each facing various charges related to the murders and the disarray at the House of Horrors. The outcomes varied, with some receiving significant prison sentences, while others pleaded to lesser charges in exchange for their cooperation with the authorities. These proceedings provided some closure to the families of the victims, although the scars left by the events could never be fully healed. The house on Nob Hill Drive, a symbol of the terror that Algarad had inflicted, was eventually demolished. Its destruction was met with mixed emotions. For some, it was a necessary act to erase a site of unimaginable horror. For others, it was a poignant reminder of the community's darkest days. The demolition served as a cathartic moment for Clemmons, allowing it to begin the process of moving forward from the shadows cast by Algarad's sinister legacy. The impact of Pazuzu Algarad's crimes rippled far beyond the immediate horror, sparking a broader discussion on societal issues. His ability to manipulate those around him raised questions about vulnerability and the factors that drive individuals into the clutches of such a destructive personality. The community was forced to confront uncomfortable truths about neglect, mental health, and the effectiveness of law enforcement in addressing early warning signs of such dangerous behavior. The tale of Pazuzu Algarad is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within a community hidden behind a veneer of normality. Algarad's descent into depravity and the subsequent chaos he wrought highlighted critical vulnerabilities in societal and community structures, emphasizing the need for vigilance and proactive intervention in potential cases of severe antisocial behavior. The trials and the subsequent demolition of Algarad's House of Horrors marked a closure of the physical reminders of his presence, but left enduring lessons about the importance of addressing mental health issues and the potential dangers of cult personalities. This case has taught us the value of community awareness and the necessity of a robust response from law enforcement and social services when red flags are raised. This dark chapter serves as a call to action for all of us to be more observant and involved in our communities. Let this story be a lesson in the critical importance of taking action when signs of turmoil and distress are evident. If you found this exploration into the depths of human behavior enlightening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more content. Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. What lessons do you think can be learned from the Pazuzu Algarad case? Let's discuss and spread awareness to ensure such tragedies are not repeated.